Thank you. Now next, I'm gonna ask to come here and join me to get the person who's gonna deliver the keynote. His name is Joshua Kunkle, and he's a data engineer at TheVentury. Thank you, Josh. Thank you very much for stopping by.
Hi, Juan. Thanks.
So, I mean, you're delivering the keynote, the opening keynote. I'm sure that there's a lot of going through your mind, but you know, we have had a couple of conversations. We were talking before, and obviously you more than know the topic. So. Then in that sense, I want to go a bit more basic.
Okay.
Yeah. What does a data scientist do?
Okay, so data scientist in general tries to take data and understand what it's telling you at some deep level. So it means finding correlations in the data, doing something to really suss out what's happening in the data, and then taking that and applying it in some way. So for example, using a deep learning, so training a deep learning model to extract information and then make some decision based on the data. So you might use that in a conversational interface, so from text to take that data, make a decision, and give something back. From images, for example, it's a lot of data in an image, so you can take that and learn, oh, that image is a dog, or that image is a cat, from taking the basic data of the image. So there's a lot of different applications, but basically it's taking data, learning what it's telling you, and doing something useful with it.
Okay. Now, how is that related to what you do at TheVentury?
Yeah, so at TheVentury, we have a lot of different projects that we work on. So we work with clients in conversational interfaces, for example. So that's taking text, extracting language out of the text. So what do the words mean in relationship to each other, and in terms of a mathematical model, so that you can deliver, the meaning of the text, for example. We do image processing. So taking an image and understanding what's in there. For example, if you want to identify an object, if you want to identify some feature of the image, so things like that. So a lot of different projects that we're doing at TheVentury involve big data and doing something cool and interesting with it, which is a lot of fun.
And is this what you were doing before? I mean, how do you end up at TheVentury as a data scientist?
So yeah, so before I worked at CERN in Geneva. So at CERN, it's also big data, so collecting a lot of data. And in that case, you want to turn a lot of data into a scientific result, into a publication saying, oh, I found this cool new particle, or I searched for this new theory. So that's using a lot of data and really understanding it very precisely to extract information. From there, so that sort of experience for me gave me a deep appreciation and understanding for what it means to understand data, and then do something with it. So bringing that to TheVentury, what I like is that now I get to work on so many different projects and apply that know-how in so many different ways, and even be creative with it in some ways to bring up new ideas. So it's a lot of fun.
It's more dynamic, yeah?
More dynamic, yeah.
Because in CERN would be maybe a longer project that you need to focus on. Yeah. Now, especially with Elevate, I mean, you're getting new startups and...
Exactly.
Cool. And how actually has it been for you to then work with the startups? You have 5 startups. Do you work with all of them? What have you been doing with them? Yeah,
so working with the startups is a lot of fun because they're bringing in new ideas, so they want to do new and interesting things with data. So it's been a lot of fun talking with them, understanding what they want to accomplish, and then trying to bring them together with the data that they have, the data that exists, to make that happen. And one of the challenges is that the startups don't have a lot of data because they're very new companies. So we have to see how can we use the existing data, how can we bring in other data so transfer learning, and how can we plan for the future so that they can best utilize the data as they collect it.
Okay. And what do you think is particular from these startups actually that we will see today? I mean, they have very different focus areas and business models and so on. So can you maybe go a bit more into the details of that?
About the specific startups.
Yeah.
So for example, I find we have one called Freilich.
Yeah.
So they want to help match people who are interested in different kinds of music. So it's sort of like what Spotify does.
Okay.
In the sense that if you want to go listen to music, they say, hey, here's a song that you might like. So they want to do something similar by learning what kind of music events people like in this sort of sharing community.
Okay.
And then using that to suggest events for different people. We have a few HR hiring startups, so that's a really cool and interesting application of machine learning now, because you take for example, an entire CV and try to say, is this a good candidate or not? So there's so much information in there to extract and it's a big data, dealing with correlations in the data, and to use that to their advantage is really interesting.
Yeah, and actually I think I was talking with one of the girls from Higher Flows, and she mentioned that something that would take a person 3 days, now they can do it in 6 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's insane.
That's the cool thing about artificial intelligence, is it takes those decisions into either something almost immediate or something that you can easily use with a human. So here's what I think the machine thinks are the best options. Now you look and make the decision.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not that eliminates the person is still there. Somebody needs to make the decision. They're just facilitating and augmenting actually the work process.
Yeah, exactly. That person can do much more, can be much more effective. That's what I think is a cool thing about artificial intelligence. It's really humans working with machines to make work more efficient, basically.
Yeah, I was at a conference where the speaker was talking about AI and how everybody is like, we're gonna get replaced and what's gonna happen there. And in the end, what he said is, look, AI would do things and help you out just like machines did. Yeah. And we'll be the ones who continue to ask the questions. We're the ones who have the how.
Yeah.
No, super interesting. And now I want to bring it actually, now that we discussed a bit more about the topic of AI, your talk today. You're going to tell us a bit about the bias in AI. I saw that you also wrote a blog post on bias of AI. If you want, you can watch it. You can read it at TheVentury blog. But can you tell us a bit more about that as a concept and what you will talk later?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting because it's becoming a real challenge in artificial intelligence. Bias is becoming a big challenge. And what I mean is like prejudicial bias. So making biased decisions against women, against minorities, for example. And it's a big challenge because, for a while, artificial intelligence had the trouble of needing data or needing the best algorithms. But we really have that now, and you can really make very complicated algorithms to do this. But what we find in some cases is that these algorithms are reflecting human biases. So they're learning our biases from the data, and then replicating that when they act. So that's a challenge, and so part of my presentation is sort of talking about where those biases come from, what we can sort of do about it as a community, as corporations, and some technical tools that can be used to address it. I think it's a really interesting topic also because when you make artificial intelligence, you make some product. In some sense, you want it to reflect the human decision. You want it to be acting like the human, but much faster, for example. But when that thing is biased, in some ways, it's a mirror back to ourselves. It's saying, actually, it's the humans who are biased.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, we don't like that, right? We don't like seeing our own biases in something like that. So I think we need to put in the work to fix that, and so I think that's why it's a cool
because the technology is not there yet, where it can recognize that it's being biased. I mean, it wouldn't know. So
computers don't know our biases, and so that's a complication. We sort of have to say, we have to put in the thought and the effort to identify where we might be introducing biases, and then tell the machine, we might be introducing bias here. Is there bias? Can we fix it? And so that's where we're at now.
Whose role is that then to be aware of, okay, where could it be a bias? Like now, is that going to be a new role that maybe like ethics as head of ethics at AI, machine learning?
I think it could be because, for example, in hiring, even now companies have to think about bias in hiring, especially in the tech field when there are so few women relative to men who are being hired. And that's, like I said, that's being reflected in the AI as well. So it's really, it goes from the top to the bottom. So data scientists need to think about it when they're understanding the data, when they're putting the data into machine learning. Developers need to think about it when they're developing the products. Project managers, I think it's through the whole company structure that need to realize that bias is coming from some fundamental nature, and it's infecting the business practices. And so it should really be considered on all levels. Mm-hmm. And that's a good way to help solve the problem in the end, and then ensure that whatever products you're delivering are mitigating the biases that exist.
I have so many questions, but I think that if I keep asking, we're gonna spoil your keynote later. And I don't want you to like tell us everything already because people are watching, and of course they'll see it later. But wow, yeah, I'm sure I'll approach you after the event because I have many questions, especially like then processes and Thank you very much for stopping by.
Great.
I wish you a great keynote. All the best. And thank you for your time. Really very interesting talk.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.